As you probably know, I am a professional game designer. Professional in the sense that I am paid for doing it. Now, as soon as I meet someone new, the first thing they ask me is, what's your favorite game? So I thought I'd try to answer that question. First off, let me say that, in fact, my actual favorite games are the games that I am currently trying to get finished. My entire attention is on those. My every waking moment considers them. So at this time, my favorite games are Call of Cthulhu Terrapaths, a game tentatively called Starship Captain, and two smaller games we're not ready to announce yet. But these aren't my favorites for the reasons that I'm usually being asked the question. They're my favorite because I'm focused on them, trying to get them done. Plus, I don't want to tell them this because as a game designer, I shouldn't be naming one of my own games as a favorite. That smacks of a giant ego. Another issue is that I don't have just one favorite game, just like I don't have one favorite food or one favorite movie. I mean, I like lobster a lot, but if I could afford lobster every single night, I would probably switch things out from time to time. Probably. I also really love the film Casablanca. I own it. I could watch it every single evening, but I don't. And with games, it's worse because I own a lot of games, and so I have a lot to choose from. And my feelings on one day or a topic I've been reading about or my dreams from last night or whoever is available as an opponent are all important in determining what game I want to play next. So my plan for this video is to name one of my favorite games in each of several categories and talk a little about it. So, first, Sandy's own creation. I felt I should name one of my own games. I have a lot to choose from. I mean, if you've seen the channel trailer, you know what I'm talking about. I've done a lot of games. One of my proudest moments was when I was sitting at the table with four of my closest friends, and one of them mentioned that his favorite game of mine was The Gods War. So I go, oh, thanks, Chris. That was his name, Chris. And I turned to another friend and said, so what's your favorite game of mine? He said Cthulhu Wars without hesitation. The fourth friend said Planet Apocalypse, and the third friend said Planet Apocalypse, and the fourth friend said his favorite game of mine was Cthulhu Wars. So that was a great moment because those four games are among my top ones, and all four friends like a different one. So that was cool. I like that. I didn't tell them at the time. I just glowed on the inside. But perhaps predictably, for this, asking what Sandy's own creation favorite game is, I'm going to pick the game I'm currently working on. So I did warn you about that. So Call of Cthulhu Terrapaths. I'm not just picking the game because it's my most recent. When I did Cthulhu Wars, it flowed like I was inspired from above. You know, like Cthulhu himself was telling me what to do. Terrapaths wasn't like that. It did not flow easily from my brain. I've been working on it more than 3 years, and it has been a massive pain most of that time. I had to almost create it. It was totally not fun, so I trashed it. Then I tried again, and it wasn't fun. Then I tried to give up on it and do something else, but my son made me go back to Terrapaths because he thought it was a great product. I can correctly say that this game, Terrapaths, has been the most arduous game I've ever designed. But now that it's mostly finished, I can say that I am proud of what I've done and been forced to do, to create something new that looks really good, that plays in a fun new way that I haven't seen before, and that I believe will be an asset to my career. So that's my current favorite. I'm also going to say that Terrapaths should be due this year in stores, God willing. I know you're thinking, Sandy's promised so many games, they didn't deliver on time. But this time I think I have a pretty good shot at it. You see, Terrapaths doesn't have any plastic figures, it doesn't have special dice, so it doesn't have a hellish tooling and production time. In fact, I have a pre-production prototype, which is basically the full game here. As a prototype, we had found some, errors and typos. That's why I got the prototype, right? So, there's a cool map board of the Silver Twilight Lodge. There's maps of all kinds of cool places from the mythos. Anyway, I think I'm talking too much about how I like Terrapaths, so let's move on to the next category. But watch for Terrapaths here. And let's talk about games I didn't design, get to the real meat of this meeting. So role-playing games. My favorite role-playing game is RuneQuest, designed by Steve Perrin and friends. I love the RuneQuest combat system. I fell in love with this game and this world in 1978, and I have been playing it on a regular basis ever since. I had a campaign in California that lasted over 6 years, and I've had 2 campaigns in Texas that lasted 14 and 7 years respectively. So yeah, I've had long campaigns in this. Now I also play my own game Call of Cthulhu a lot, but the rule is I don't pick my own games for these other categories. So maybe having RuneQuest as my favorite role-playing game doesn't count as much as for another category, because the thousands of hours I've spent in RuneQuest really has to do with the adventures we had, the stories we tell, my friends, and our camaraderie. The game system is part of it, but it's a minor part. Also, it's so hard to switch to a new role-playing game that for me it's a non-starter. I don't even like newer editions of old role-playing games. Okay, digital games. Here I can answer clearly and concisely. The answer may surprise you. In my opinion, the greatest digital game of all time was Culdcept Saga. This game came out for the Xbox 360 in 2008. I'd already played an earlier Culdcept game in 2003. I think it was on PlayStation. Culdcept is a weird cross between Magic the Gathering and Monopoly. You have a map board that you move around on a track and you collect gold, you go by gold, you get money, and you're casting spells to take over territories, kind of like Monopoly, but with monsters, and the monsters have different abilities, and they have a wide variety of abilities. You have spells you can cast, you have weapons you can give the creatures, and so it's like a combat game. It's Magic the Gathering, it's Monopoly. It has more depth and more interest than any other game I've played. I can just go on and on about it. One reviewer said, Culdcept is perhaps the most niche title in my gaming history. I can't tell you if you'd like it, but I did. So, on to card games. Here's another one I can answer straight up. My favorite card game is Contract Bridge. So, growing up, the newspaper always had like an article on bridge. There's always with symbols of these weird numbers and letters. There's a bridge thing, and I always wondered about it. And I was a game designer, so I was curious, but I'd never played bridge. I played other card games, but I never played bridge. And when I was living in Maryland, a friend of ours, we played games at lunchtime, and one of our friends said, "Hey, let's learn to play Contract Bridge." He already knew how. And we said, "Sure, I want to know how." So he taught us. And what happened is that we went from playing a variety of games every lunchtime to only playing bridge. We liked it so much. The reason bridge is so amazing is not only do we know when it came from, we know the actual guy did it. It was a Vanderbilt. He did it. He designed it on a trip across the Atlantic. He didn't design it from scratch. It's based on an earlier game called Auction Bridge, which in turn is based on an older game called Old Fashioned Bridge, which is based on Whist, and it kind of goes back. So it has a history. But the thing about bridge that's super interesting is that you're rewarded not only for playing well, but also for bidding well. And the thing is, when you're bidding well, if you bid too high on your in the game for trying to take the thing, for trying to take the tricks, then you get no points. And if you bid too low, you vastly underscore what you could have got. So people can be good in a lot of different ways. You can be good on defense. You can be good on bidding. You can be good on play. You can be good on reading opponents' plans. It's just like so many ways to be good. And the other thing that's great about it is all card games have the flaw that you can get a super sucky hand. Now, the only two card games I know where having a sucky hand is kind of mitigated by the game system is poker and bridge. In poker, you can get a sucky hand, but the ability to bluff and make other guys, but there's a lot of, you have this social dynamic of making your sucky hand be good, right? Or making your good hand seem sucky. In bridge, what happens is that if you have a sucky hand, then your opponent with the good hand are forced by the bidding rules, if they want to maximize the points, to bid so high up for their victory that even your sucky hand has a pretty good chance of defeating them. And if they play it safe and bid lower, then hey, they scored a lot fewer points and you can take them out later on. So anyway, I love bridge. On to the next game, board games. So this is a tougher one for me to discuss because I like a lot of board games and I can play dozens of them in a year. That's not so easy in a role-playing game. But I can't, if I have to pick one, I can't. So I'm going to pick three. So first, I'm going to pick Cosmic Encounter. Now, Cosmic Encounter came out in the 70s, and it is interesting because it's sort of a game designer's game. Every game designer I know is impressed by Cosmic Encounter. They don't always like it, but they're really impressed by it. It's cool because the different cosmic powers you have are super, super different. There's elements of that I've adapted for Cthulhu Wars and Hyperspace because I love the highly asymmetrical creatures. You have creatures that always win their attacks, and you have creatures that can ignore alliances, and you have every kind of these creatures that make you discard cards from your hand. Everything they can trade with you, so it's really cool. It's never been out of print since it was first introduced. But the interesting thing is when it was first introduced from Eon Games, then Eon went out of business and another company picked up Cosmic Encounter. Then that company got rid of Cosmic Encounter. Another company. So it keeps moving. It's not a 6th or 7th company by now. It's always in print, but always by different companies because no one wants to let Cosmic Encounter go out of print. So yeah, Cosmic Encounter. Another game I really like by Decision Games, it's called Napoleonic Wars. And I really like it because it's fun. I like the Napoleon Wars. And it's got an interesting feature where one player is the French, okay, with Napoleon. The other player is the British. And those guys always have to be enemies to each other. But all the other players who were, Austria, Russia, Prussia, they can switch sides. Now they can't switch sides willy-nilly. They have to do it at the end of a time period, but they can switch. So for example, Russia might start, initially everyone's against Napoleon, but if Napoleon starts losing, then the other countries switch to join Napoleon, not because they want Napoleon to win, but because they have more chance to score points by going against the stronger side. So there's this interesting dynamic of players switching teams. Now, and of course, you have the leaders of each faction trying to get people to, there's Britain trying to keep people on his side and Napoleon trying to get people to join his side by offering them things. Hey, I'll let you have control of Spain if you join me, that kind of, So it actually influenced an upcoming game of mine where I have 2 characters who are always enemies and every other player can switch teams. So, we'll see how that goes. Another one of my very favorite games is Civilization. So Civilization is the greatest economic board game ever made. Every decision you make is economic. There are wars in it, but the wars are very simple and mathematical. You don't roll dice or anything. You're just like, I can go in here and take out your unit and I'll use mine. And you don't actually want to do a very vigorous war, because if you beat a country down too much in a war, then they aren't good trading partners. And trading is much more important than war. It's also interesting because the civs don't have inherent abilities. It's not asymmetrical in that sense, but it is asymmetrical in that the way your civ develops is different, and it's not just random, because if you are the Minoans off the island of Crete, then there's certain technologies that are just better for you that you want to get, so you tend to get those technologies. Where if you're the Thracians, an inland power in northern the northern Balkans, then you don't want the same things as Crete. You buy other technologies, and so you kind of work it all together. So I like Civilization a lot. I did work on Sid Meier's Civilization back in when I was at Microprose, and we played Civilization together, me and Sid and a bunch of other guys, so he got a good look at it. So any elements in the computer game Civilization that resemble the board game Civilization are not coincidence. But that's cool, because that's, you always want to steal good ideas. So those are my favorite game. Not really. I mean, I like all the games I talked about, but I also like a bunch of other games I didn't have time to talk about, and they go on and on and on, and here's a bunch of them. What do these have in common? I have no idea. Some are short, some are long, some are cooperative, some literally take me months to play, some are old school war games, others are all types. So I guess I just really like games, and I like talking about them. So instead of droning on and on, I will shut up now. So if you like me, click for notifications or subscribe, and consider buying my stuff. It's great.